reflections upon St. Francis de Sales' introduction to the devout life. Here in part 2, we've reached chapter 20, where we are now considering frequent communion. St. Francis describes first the beautiful gift of the Eucharist and what it can do for us. It says, "Our Savior has instituted the most august sacrament of the Eucharist, which contains his flesh and his blood in their reality, to the end that he who eats of it shall live forever. Whoever therefore frequently eats with devotion this food, so effectually confirms the health of his soul, that it is almost impossible that he should be poisoned by any kind of evil affliction. We cannot be nourished with this flesh of life and at the same time live with the affections of death. Thus, as men dwelling in the earthly paradise might have avoided corporal death by power of that living fruit which God had planted therein, so they might also avoid spiritual death by virtue of this sacrament of life. Adam and Eve could have avoided having to sin had they not eaten from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, but rather ate forever from the tree of life. So too, if we avoid all things that would cause us death and instead are refreshed at the Eucharist, the bread of life, the very body of the one who hung upon the tree, then we too may gain life eternal." Then he says that this is the analogy of different fruits that may go bad unless preserved for the use of sugar. So he says, our hearts, however frail and weak, may be preserved from the corruption of sin when seasoned and sweetened with the incorruptible flesh and blood of the Son of God. So, to be nourished by the Lord in this great gift of the Eucharist, he calls us to receive communion frequently. Every Sunday, we are exhorted to do so, at the very least. The question also arises as to what about receiving communion every day throughout the week? And both he and St. Augustine, whom he quotes, put forth that they neither automatically recommend nor automatically discourage such a practice, but they leave it in the discretion of the spiritual direction of the individual person themselves. Because certainly this is a profound food for our souls, but he says that it requires a certain degree of connection to God before the daily reception will be a fruitful one. So certainly somebody who is caught in continual sin and maybe not seeking out reconciliation consistently for that, the daily reception of Holy Communion isn't going to be fruitful, and in fact would dishonor the Lord. And so we would not automatically call them to that. Of course, most of those that are in that state are probably not seeking out daily communion in the first place. But he says that, yes, once a soul has reached a certain degree of union with the Lord, then that would be an appropriate thing for them to receive communion even daily. But for all of us, even those struggling with sin, and this follows the precepts of the church to go to Mass at least once a week, that would be good for our souls, is to receive Holy Communion on Sunday once per week. It says that there may be cases in which there are impediments for somebody to be able to receive communion daily, and it may be because they're not called to do so. Maybe because it says that they have certain obligations of others that they owe, and so are not able to, and it would be not good for them to shirk those duties to be able to attend daily Mass and receive communion. But at other points in their life, then they may be called to be able to do that. But he does say that, Neither mother, nor wife, nor husband, nor father would prevent you from receiving communion often. So not to let others purposely prevent you from being able to receive communion, whether it may be because they themselves don't feel like they should attend, or prevents you from having time for prayer. But we need especially that gift of Him each Sunday in this great sacrament. He mentions too, he brings up illness. And he says that there are no illnesses that would prevent one from receiving Holy Communion, unless, of course, it's an illness that would cause one to not be able to take in this food through their bodies. But that's why, of course, for those that are ill, it's the great desire to bring them Holy Communion when we can, to strengthen them in the case of illness. Of course, it may be that one's unable to come to Mass and receive Holy Communion, so one's obligation due to significant illness is removed for attending Mass. But of course, that may be the case in which the home man can have this precious body and blood of our Lord brought to them. To receive communion every week, it is requisite, he says, to be free from mortal sin, from any affection to venial sin, and have, moreover, a great desire for receiving communion. To communiate every day, it is necessary we should overcome the greatest part of our evil inclinations, and that it should be by the advice of our spiritual Father. In the next chapter, St. Francis will go into the interior attitude that we should have in receiving the precious body of our Lord